Martinelli might be approaching his final weeks as an Arsenal player. Offers coming in from Turkey, interest from other clubs. Arsenal not really receiving the bid they want to receive for a player like Martinelli, with other wingers going for higher prices. I'm looking at you, Neto. But for a lot of Arsenal fans, it feels like Martinelli's time has almost dried up. The reaction is pretty simple. It's good to see you, but off you pop. I understand that. The goals have fallen off. It's really been a struggle for Martinelli to get in the league. Only one league goal, which was a massive one. Respect that. Probably changed the title race if you think about it. He hasn't really developed into the goal-scoring winger that we saw 3 seasons ago in that big dynamic 22-23 season. And ever since then, he's kind of looked like the shell of himself. If Arsenal want to get better, you have to be willing to move on players, even if you have a distinct relationship with them and all the memories. Look at Leandro Trossard, club legend. What he did against West Ham, easily a club legend. But with his age, the money, the bid that we received, his journeys, his goals, it was just time to move on. And we always respect for what he did, but there's always a spot where you have to let go of a player rather than hanging on to them for too long. And it seems that's the case with Martinelli too. Everyone is ready to move on from Martinelli and get a new winger, someone else that can bring up the levels. The levels are thin though. To jump these margins is very tight. I keep coming back to the same argument with Martinelli though. In a Mikel Arteta system, high attacking left backs and left wingers that really come in defensively to contribute, who is an upgrade on Martinelli that actually fits the system? Because finding a winger who might be better than Martinelli is pretty easy, but finding a winger for what Martinelli does is much more difficult. To understand why this is the case, I think we need to look just at the first match between Arsenal and Manchester City. If you look at the left wing and right wing position, it is far from equilibrium for those two sides. Just look at where Christos Zolis is touching the football. Deeper in the park, helping out the defensive line. 12 touches in Arsenal's defensive third. 17 in the middle third. 13 in the final third. He's almost covering the entire left side of the pitch. Compare that to Noni Madueke, higher up the pitch. 43.5% of his touches just right by the 18. 0 touches in the defensive area, only 4 in the midfield area. 19 touches in the final third. These are both Arsenal wingers, but 2 very different system players. This is where it starts to make sense. Look at Ricardo Calafiori, maybe our best striker on the team. Look at Calafiori's heat map. Higher up the pitch, really attacking, getting up there. I mean, he scored the first goal in 25 seconds. We all know Calafiori will attack with ease, will run up and down that left wing. You might even see him on the right wing. And Capie is another option we've seen that. Crosses he's pinged in, which has gotten much better throughout his time at Arsenal. Meanwhile, it's a little bit different when it comes to the right side. If your left back is constantly leaving that traditional space that Calafiori has left, it makes sense for a winger who can defensively attribute that and actually step deeper on the pitch. Look at Arsenal's first half heat map just to give you that showcase. Zolis really hugging tight in with Calafiori. Meanwhile, Madueke is higher up than Ben White by a significant margin. And a lot more work seems to be on that right side. You can look at Martin Odegaard, look at Bruno Guimaraes, look at Miles Lewis-Skelly, even at the left side pivot, is playing more into the midfield down a central role, giving that left side a lot more help needed to attest to by Zolis and Calafiori. You can even look at it by quarter. Look at the fourth quarter. Look at the final frame of the match. Zolis and Capie are basically hugging each other on the left side. Meanwhile, Saka has a lot more space to operate with. And that's exactly what Arteta wants with this team. When Zolis gets the ball, he's direct. He goes straight at fullbacks. Look at that second assist he had to Martin Odegaard. Crisp, pure, got it right to him. We've been missing that 100%. It almost looks like a mini Alexis Sanchez. Back when I was growing up in my youthful and teen years, watching prime Alexis Sanchez go to work, it felt like we missed this directness from a player, especially on the left side. But when Zolis loses the football, or he doesn't have it in possession, he's much deeper. His heat map is hugging that left wing all and up and down the pitch. And you can see with Madueke's heat map, it's a much different story. Higher up the pitch, not really being much of a defensive contribution for the team. The team isn't symmetrical. The asymmetry of the team is massive. That is why you need to have a left winger who can actually put in defensive contributions. And the individual numbers on each side make this more interesting. Zolis, 27 passes, 5 progressive passes, 3 key passes, 4 progressive passes received, 6 tackles, 4 recoveries. He just wasn't sitting deep, but he was actually going forward. Somebody that can cover all grounds of the pitch. Still creating, still receiving up high at pitch, still dropping deep and helping the defensive line. That's what Christos Zolis does. And that's why Arteta wanted to bring him for such a cheap price. But Zolis also had 6 tackles. 6. Look at Noni Madueke. 2. Bukayo Saka's cameo when he come in, only one. Same team, same broad position, completely different roles. But I do have to put a massive asterisk on this game. City, almost 60% possession, 70% field tilt. Man City controlled most of the territory. So of course, Arsenal players are going to defend more than they need to, maybe against Coventry on Friday, maybe against a team at home when they're facing with the Emirates roaring. I'm not going to tell you this Community Shield is exactly how Arsenal will play for 38 league matches. Heck, I would be surprised if we had 30% possession or 35% possession in more than one match this season. But what interests me is the difference within this same match. Zollis and Madueke are playing in the same game state, yet playing two completely different roles. And that's what brings us back to Gabriel Martinelli. Because the one thing Gabriel Martinelli brings to this Arsenal side is work, is ethic, is pushing up and down the pitch. Let's compare Gabriel Martinelli to some of the left wingers that are on Arsenal's radar, or merely that are on the block. I want to bring up two left wingers who have near the same market value, who some fans have brought up just to be replacements for Martinelli. One for humor, and one for, yeah, this actually might happen on deadline day. Marcus Rashford, 28 years old, Manchester United, Barcelona last season, Hansi Flick's system, high lines, needs to put in more work, had a rejuvenated season. Remember those two bangers against Newcastle? Many Arsenal fans calling for him to be a deadline day loan or even a permanent transfer. And why not humor me one more? Somebody that's tall, somebody that's rapid, somebody that's creative, can at least do some work on the offensive front. Rafa Leao. You look at duels contested per 90, Martinelli, 10.8, higher than both. Tackles, Martinelli, 1.1, higher than both. Ground duels contested, Martinelli, 8.6, higher than both. Ground duels won, Martinelli, 3.8, higher than both. When you compare the volume of work that Martinelli does, it's something that he does better than these left wingers at a cheap premium price. He doesn't lead every defensive measurement, of course, with Leao. He has better success percentages in some of these duels, but Martinelli is contesting in more of these duels. My point is the volume. That is what you want to see in a left winger position under a Mikel Arteta side. Makes more tackles, gets in ground duels. Arsenal fans, you have seen it throughout. Makes more tackles, gets involved in more duels. Actually set himself up in a position that can make himself a defensive presence. Martinelli just doesn't play left wing when he has the ball. He plays the entire left side when we don't. There's one name I can attest to. One name that can change the levels, the margins of this football club. Bradley Barcola. 23 years old, Paris Saint-Germain, good World Cup, a star-studded left winger, somebody that can truly raise the levels here at Arsenal. That big attacking signing. We're not talking the links with Vinicius. We're not talking those margins. Actually going for the Champions League. Bradley Barcola is probably the only true left winger on the market that actually changes the game. We know what he can do on the ball. Yes, his finishing may be a little streaky, and that might be frustrating for some of y'all. The league goals does tell a story, but if we're looking at an Arteta system, somebody that can actually defensively contribute and do magic on the ball, that is Bradley Barcola. Look at these numbers per 90. Yes, Gabriel Martinelli has slightly more duels contested, but tackles made, Bradley Barcola higher. Success in duels in the air, Bradley Barcola higher by a significant margin. Contesting duels, winning ground duels, interceptions. Bradley Barcola is the winger that Mikel Arteta wants in his system. And now this is where the argument becomes too easy again. Sell Martinelli. Buy a better winger. Okay, but are we willing to pay that premium price for Bradley Barcola? He's deep in talks with Liverpool. Liverpool seem to be agreed on personal terms, and he already looks to be going to Anfield. But are we really, truly going to let that happen if we can contest this purchase? If we let Bradley Barcola go for that really high fee, does he fit Kroenke's status of an 100 million player? Kroenke sat down in an interview with Gary Neville and Ian Wright, and he spoke about what a 100 million player looks like. Somebody who's a leader, somebody that can change the levels. Declan Rice, somebody that can lead on the pitch and off the pitch. Does Bradley Barcola do that in a KSC ownership? There's not really a better left winger on the market than Barcola. And if we drop Barcola off and don't talk about him, there's not really a better left winger that actually puts in a system that Mikel Arteta wants. Zollis is important here because I'm not saying he's replacing Gabriel Martinelli. Truly, we need another left winger. Leandro Trossard is gone. We need somebody that can play that backup winger position, somebody that can come on the 65th, 70th minute and make an impact. I know this is a small sample size, but do you remember when Martinelli was coming on in the 70th minute in the Champions League in September 2025 when he won that huge streak of goals? That opener against Bilbao, massive. The equalizer against Manchester City. That run he had and scored against Bayern shows exactly a winger we need on our left side. What Zollis gives is another example of what Arteta wants. He still comes deep. He still plays defensive. He still can cover ground really well. He's good at attacking directly. It's definitely an upgrade from Gabriel Martinelli, but it's not someone who completely replaces Gabriel Martinelli. So if Arsenal do look to sell Gabriel Martinelli, the issue won't be finding the attacking numbers. Trust me. We've all seen how he works in the final third. We've all been frustrated. We've all wanted to see more offensive output from Gabriel Martinelli. The issue is finding the person that can do his defensive duties at the price that Josh Kroenke wants to pay. That player does exist, and maybe selling Martinelli is absolutely the right decision. I'm not saying he has to stay. The levels have to improve. His attacking game has stagnated in some areas. Arsenal should always be looking to try to improve and get to those margins. But I think there's a big difference in finding a better left winger and finding an Arsenal left winger. So would you keep Gabriel Martinelli? Would you pay the premium for Bradley Barcola? Or would you look for another winger? Let me know down in the comments. And until then, this is the High Line.